So there's a few more things I want to do to the scene to make it look and work better. So let me go back to the first frame. First of all, I don't like how all the characters start walking and then they all start running at the same time. So to fix that, I'm just going to go here, and when we set the timer, start the timer on the first state, I want to add a random value. So we'll do a random value by range, and we'll just bring this into the time, and we'll make sure we set that between maybe a 0.5 and 2. And now when we hit play, we'll notice that everything is not all moving at the same time. Some characters start running earlier, and everyone starts in their own time, and it just makes it a lot more interesting. So let's just add a little randomize. The next thing I want to do is I want to go in, and when a character is walking slowly or running slowly, I want them to go back to walking. So to do that, we're going to create another trigger in our state tree here. We're going to use a less than, and we're going to take the speed, and we're going to test it, see if it's less than a certain number. And if it is, we're going to go to a new state. Now I know the characters are moving at a speed of around 48. We're going to say when it is less than, I'm just going to get rid of some of these extra triggers I have here. We're going to go to trigger 0. So instead of going up, we've been going like from state 1 to 2 and 0 to 1, we're going to go from state 2 to 0. And that's one of the great things about states. And we need to set a value, so say less than 38. Let's try that and see what happens. Now I have in wireframe, so I can kind of see what's happening here color wise and see if everything's working correctly. One thing you have to make sure is when you do this is you do have to make sure that when it goes from one state to another, you have to reset your timer. So he just started walking there, as we can see, and then he started running again. So we can see based on the speed and the timer, and just make sure up in your state 0 your start timer has the reset, because if it doesn't, it's going to know the timer had finished and we'll just jump straight to state 2 again. So you'll see here with the timer's reset turned off, it will jump. You'll see it's going to flash from blue and then straight to green again. So let's see if one of these guys slow down enough, and some takes a while before they do. So as I get to here, there's just like a little flash there. It's hard to see on the screen, but if I turn this on, now you can see they're actually getting to their state and staying at their state when they slow down. So everything is pretty much set up here the way I want it. Again, just make sure any timer you're using has a reset on, and we know this is everything looks like it's set up correctly now. So our scene's almost done. The other two things I want to do is make sure there's no problems when characters get to obstacles or goals. And when a character stops moving, sometimes the align of velocity can cause a character to kind of flicker or jitter going back and forwards. So I'm just going to use an if statement here and put it into the align on velocity. And then we're going to do a quick test to check the speed is greater than a certain speed. So again, we get the particle velocity. Let me just do a get. So get particle velocity. And from there we're going to take the speed, and we're just going to do a greater than, and just check the speed is greater than, a low speed. And if it is, then of course do the line. But if the speed is very low, we may want to align it because it could just cause the particles to jitter. So 0.25 sounds like a good speed for the lowest possible speed. The other thing I did before was I noticed some particles are flying off the ground. I haven't seen it in this scene, but you can also make sure velocity, the y-axis, is zeroed out. You can do that by doing a vector to scalar and a scalar to vector, and just connecting these in and then resetting everything. So what I'm doing here is just taking the vector and now I'm connecting up the x to keep the x-axis, connecting up the z-axis but not connecting the y, and that means by default it's setting the y to 0. And then we just reset the vector. So reset the velocity here, and then hook this back into our execute node. Again, we're leaving the align last. It's the last thing we want to do. And this will just stop if your object's not high enough or there's some setting that's just too much for it. It's going to stop things flying off the ground. So let me just move this up, move things around a tiny bit to make everything. I like to keep my ice tree somewhat organized, especially when it gets large like this. Again, this could be broken down into a series of compounds, but for this example it's easier for everyone to see what I was doing without using too many compounds, since you can see how everything is connected in one big view here. So that should be everything I need, and let's hit play and just see how it looks and make sure nothing too crazy is going on. Again, there's always some tweaking and some value changing afterwards, but we can see the characters run. They don't all run at the same time. They die when they hit an obstacle, so they're nulls. They run towards their goals. They go around these obstacles, and they walk when they slow down. As you can see, when they go slow, they walk, and again, the particles change speed based on what they're doing. Again, it plays back pretty slowly here. They're spread out, they're not too close together. Characters aren't running through each other too much, so everything is working pretty well for this crowd system.